Have you ever watched someone lose everything in just a few seconds? A good man. A hardworking father. A mechanic who spent years fixing problems no one else could solve. One rainy afternoon, he was publicly humiliated, laughed at, and thrown out of the only job that kept food on his little daughter's table. The managers believed they had won. They never imagined that one calm phone call would change everything. 20 minutes later, the people who mocked him would be standing in shocked silence as the words echoed through the factory, "Fire every one of them." Before we begin, welcome to Echoes of Stories. If you enjoy heartfelt stories about kindness, courage, and unforgettable moments, please subscribe, leave a like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories every week. Jacob Turner was the kind of mechanic every company hoped to find. He arrived before sunrise, stayed after everyone else had gone home, and never complained. Grease covered his hands almost every day, but his heart remained gentle. Ever since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, his whole world had revolved around raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Every morning, Jacob packed Lily's lunch, braided her hair the best he could, and drove her to school before heading to the repair shop. Life wasn't easy. Bills kept piling up, and sleep was something he rarely enjoyed. Still, he smiled because he wanted Lily to believe everything would be okay. At the repair facility, Jacob was known as the man who could fix machines that others had already given up on. Whenever expensive equipment stopped working, the supervisors quietly called him. But instead of appreciating him, some managers grew jealous. One afternoon, a new operations manager named Brian arrived. He believed expensive degrees mattered more than years of experience. To him, Jacob was just another mechanic wearing dirty coveralls. Brian wanted to prove he could run the company without relying on veteran workers. When one production machine suddenly failed, Brian blamed Jacob without even asking what had happened. "You've cost this company thousands of dollars," Brian shouted in front of everyone. Jacob calmly tried to explain. "The machine wasn't maintained. I reported the problem weeks ago." Brian refused to listen. "I don't care. Pack your toolbox. You're fired." The warehouse became silent. Some workers looked down, too afraid to defend Jacob. Others quietly shook their heads. Jacob didn't argue. He simply removed his company badge, picked up his worn toolbox, and thanked the co-workers who had treated him with respect. As he reached the parking lot, rain began falling. He sat inside his old pickup truck for several moments. Then he looked at the picture of Lily taped to his dashboard. Instead of feeling angry, he whispered, "Everything happens for a reason." He picked up his phone. The call lasted less than 30 seconds. "Good afternoon," Jacob said politely. "I think it's time." The person on the other end replied, "We'll be there in 20 minutes." Inside the factory, Brian celebrated. He laughed with several executives, convinced he had removed his biggest problem. But 20 minutes later, 3 black SUVs rolled through the entrance. Everyone stopped working. Several sharply dressed executives stepped out, followed by the company's owner, Mr. Harrison. Brian hurried over with a confident smile. "Sir, we weren't expecting you." Mr. Harrison ignored him. Instead, he walked directly toward Jacob, who was still sitting quietly in his truck. To everyone's surprise, the owner smiled warmly. "Jacob," he said, extending his hand. "I'm sorry this happened." The workers stared in disbelief. Brian looked completely confused. "What is going on?" he asked. Mr. Harrison turned around. "Jacob has worked with my family for over 15 years. The crowd listened carefully. When my father owned this company, Jacob wasn't just our best mechanic. He saved this business. Years earlier, the company had nearly gone bankrupt after several critical machines failed. Outside engineers had demanded millions of dollars in repairs. Jacob had solved the problem in just 2 days. His ideas had saved hundreds of jobs. Mr. Harrison continued. My father promised Jacob that if anyone ever treated him unfairly, I would personally make it right. Brian's confident expression disappeared. Mr. Harrison looked toward the management team. I've reviewed the security footage. It clearly shows Jacob was blamed for a maintenance failure he reported weeks ago. Then he spoke the words no one expected. Fire every one of them. Silence covered the factory. Brian's face turned pale. The supervisors who had laughed earlier suddenly realized kindness mattered more than power. As security escorted the managers away, Jacob quietly stepped forward. He could have celebrated. Instead, he asked Mr. Harrison a surprising question. What will happen to the workers? Mr. Harrison looked puzzled. Jacob continued. They have families too. Please don't let today's mistake affect innocent people. The owner smiled. That's exactly why this company still needs you. A week later, Mr. Harrison offered Jacob something far greater than his old position. He asked him to become director of maintenance for every company facility. The promotion came with a higher salary, flexible hours, and full health benefits for Lily. Jacob accepted only after making one request. I'd like to create a training program for young mechanics. Mr. Harrison agreed immediately. Within months, experienced workers began mentoring new employees instead of competing against them. Respect slowly replaced fear. Teamwork replaced blame. People started helping one another because Jacob believed every person deserved patience and encouragement. One afternoon, Brian unexpectedly returned. He no longer wore an expensive suit. He simply wanted to apologize. I judged you without knowing you, he admitted. I was wrong. Jacob looked at him quietly. Then he smiled. I forgive you. Brian lowered his head. I don't deserve your kindness. Jacob answered softly. Maybe not today. But everyone deserves a chance to become better tomorrow. That simple conversation changed Brian more than losing his job ever could. Months later, he found work at another company where he treated every employee with respect, remembering the lesson he had learned the hard way. That evening, Jacob picked Lily up from school. Dad, she asked, did everything get better? Jacob smiled as they drove home beneath a beautiful sunset. Yes, he said. But not because someone lost their job. Lily looked at him curiously. Then why? Because kindness always gives people another chance. Lily smiled and squeezed her father's hand. At that moment, Jacob knew he had already given his daughter something far more valuable than money. He had shown her what real strength looks like. Life will sometimes treat good people unfairly. You may be misunderstood, overlooked, or even pushed aside. But never let someone else's cruelty change your heart. Kindness isn't weakness. It's quiet courage. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't watching others fall, it's choosing compassion when you have every reason not to. If this story touched your heart, remember to share kindness wherever you go, because one small act of compassion can change a life in ways you'll never imagine.